it's time for Culture Talk, where we talk about culturally relevant topics that you can use to start conversations about your faith. And I'm joined today with biochemist Fazale Rana. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Sandra.
You know, we're going to be talking about something that was confusing Brian. He's like, what is this finite-state machine? So you wrote an article about finite-state machines. What is it?
Yeah, well, it is a confusing term that probably most people aren't familiar with, but you actually encounter finite-state machines all the time in your day-to-day lives. So, for example, vending machines are an example of a finite-state machine. And it's actually a mathematical concept, an abstract, mathematical entity that essentially mathematicians use for computational purposes. But a finite-state machine is a machine that exists in a number of possible states, and it receives inputs that will cause the machine to transition from one state to the other in a predetermined manner. So a real-life example of a finite-state machine would be a vending machine, right?
So I punch in D6 and they get the sour cream and chives chips?
That's right. That's right.
Awesome.
So what's happening is, like with a vending machine, it's fully stocked, it's the initial state. And so the two inputs it's looking for, and it has to be in the right sequence, would be putting in the right amount of money, and then you make a selection. And then it goes from its initial state to a new state where it delivers that bag of chips for you. But if you made another selection, let's say a chocolate bar, that would cause a different transition to a different state. So, vending machines are an example of this mathematical abstract entity. But vending machines are really pretty sophisticated because they're performing a computation based on inputs, and again, going to a predetermined state as a result of that input.
So what exactly was discovered, like biochemical finite-state machines? What is that?
Yeah, well, our team of researchers from UC San Francisco discovered that there are biochemical finite-state machines in single-celled organisms. And these machines actually very well may explain the sophisticated behavior shown by cells. So they were looking at a particular cell called euplodes, which is a single-celled organism that typically swims around in free form in water, but can attach to solid surfaces and with appendages start walking around. But the gait is very sophisticated. It almost looks like the cell is making decisions and then responding to things in the environment. And so they were curious as to how it was going about doing it, and they discovered that what's controlling the behavior of the appendages is a network of microtubules, that can exist in different states based on the input from the environment. And so it literally is a biochemical finite-state machine where the organism is engaged in computations with this biochemical machinery to essentially go from one state to the other, and that, again, is affecting its behavior. So it's a pretty remarkable discovery, to think that, here inside the cell is a real-life example of the types of machinery that we interact with all the time. In this case, vending machines or turnstiles or things like that.
So you said, I think it's a single cell. So that's interesting because that would be pretty simple then, but even something that simple is showing a machine. Like I think that you've written about that before, and how there's complexity even in something that is considered simple. Is that right?
Yeah, well, I mean, when you start thinking about, again, the sophistication of single-celled organisms at the molecular level, it's astounding. But what's also remarkable is that complexity bears an eerie similarity to the types of designs that we would produce as human beings. And this allows us to make a revitalized watchmaker argument for God's existence and role in the origin and the design of life. And this is based on the work of William Paley, who said, hey, a watch is obviously the work of a mind, and when we look at biological systems, we see machines that have the same attributes as watches. So if a watch requires a mind, so too must these machines. And so we know that a vending machine is the product of, minds that have designed it and constructed it to work a certain way. And so when we see the same kind of machines in cells, isn't that evidence for the work of a creator?
Right. No, I think that's really interesting. So, how then would you have a conversation with someone if they know you're a scientist, they know you're a Christian? They might be like, "How do you connect the two?" And how would you have that conversation and point to not just a designer or a maker, watchmaker, but specifically the God of the Bible or the watchmaker of the Bible? How do you make that distinction?
Well, I think it would be fun if you find yourself at a vending machine in your office, with another coworker, and as you're putting in money and getting snacks or drinks out of that machine, to strike up a conversation. Just, hey, have you ever thought about what's going on in a vending machine? And hey, this is an example of a finite state machine. And then that leads you to maybe pointing out that these types of machines seem to also exist in biochemical systems. But to me, the connection to the God of the Bible is really based on the image of God. If we, as human beings, are made in God's image, then what we do is many creators should be a reflection of our creator. And so it's not just simply a creator, an unidentified creator, but a creator whose mind resonates with our mind. And the Christian faith explains that through the image of God concept.
Well, thank you so much for that. I would say if you're going to talk to someone at a vending machine, let them eat their snack in case they're hangry. You don't want to start, talking to them about faith and stuff quite yet. Let them eat. So if you'd like to hear more from Fazale Rana, go to reasons.org and check out his blog, The Cells Design.